Nettie in the house. What's up?
Hey, Anthony.
It's great to see you. I love hearing your voice.
Thank you.
You have a lovely voice. I think I told you this on our first call. Yes.
Yes. Yes, you did.
Oh, like, do you do voiceovers? So do you have you ever done voiceovers?
I never have. I never have. But since the first time I met you, it's definitely been something that's been on my mind and how to make that like concurrent to what I'm doing, like maybe side hustle to help pay for school. Definitely something to invest
Yes.
in for myself.
Yes. You are doing a lot of things. So why don't we start with the biggest news, which is where are you going to school this fall and what degree are you getting?
I am going to LAMDA and I'm receiving my MFA in classical acting.
Come on.
Ah.
Oh my gosh, so much excitement. And you didn't actually think you were going to go there until very, very recently. We're recording this in the summertime, but it wasn't until, yeah, early summer. You had thought you were going somewhere else, which was also exciting, but we will get into all that. Um, so boy, oh boy, where do we start? I mean, I guess let's start with you have a lot of professional experience,
Mhm.
especially with Shakespeare.
Yes.
What is it that made you want to go back to school as opposed to continuing with some of the professional experience you had?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate to be working in New York and Boston. I think the big thing for me was that I never felt like I had like a good foundation of acting. So while I was booking jobs and working, it was like, okay, if auditioning is like 90% of the job, how can I continue to book work? How can I like get myself to the next level of work? And do I feel like is really missing for myself? And I did an intensive with Shakespeare and Company during the winter. And it was like a month-long intensive. And it was like morning through night, you're just doing Shakespeare, you're doing voice, you're doing, some dance and movement, but it was just like so like basically like a conservatory experience. So I was like, oh wow, I love this. Maybe it's time, like finally time in my life to really do this because it's only going to help me in the future.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I know. Sometimes that can be like those workshops and those little 1 month experiences where you just eat, breathe, sleep, live it. You're just like, can I do this for a few years?
Yeah. Yeah.
um, Even if you are, experienced and professionally, you've gotten gigs and whatnot. So there was a catch though. I'll never forget when you told me this. I was like, ooh, that's interesting. You didn't have an undergrad degree.
Yeah.
So here
Yeah.
you are, we're chatting. You have all this professional experience, right? And you're looking at drama school, but you're like not ineligible for bachelor's programs, but essentially, they're not looking at folks who are in their 30s. So, what is it that how did you approach that? Did you even think you had a chance? Like, what was your frame of mind? What did people tell you about how to get into drama school?
Yeah, so I knew that it definitely was going to be an obstacle with people who were like maybe like 10 years younger than me who are applying. That's might be like the ideal candidate for some of these programs. I started looking at school in maybe 2020, 2021. I had applied for, I think, three or four schools then. And so at that time, I had kind of compiled a list of schools that were like, you can get your certificate if you have X amount of school and like equivalent experience. And I was like, okay, I feel like I fit into that, very, very niche category, but there is a way around it. And if they're willing to make an exception, for some people, I, of course, started to think maybe, it only goes those like honorary like certificates for people who might be like really well established that they want to come to their school. So of course in the back of my mind it was like, is this even a thing? Do I know anyone who's ever done this? But it is very much a thing. I'm very fortunate that with LAMDA, I am going to be getting a full-on MFA degree, which is absolutely wild. Absolutely wild that I get to, kind of hop over. But it feels really very exciting and very good.
Right. Just frog leap right over the bachelor's.
Yes, yeah. So there are definitely programs where you can get a certificate where you are taking the same MFA level courses. So I kind of compiled a list there. Um, and yeah, I just never in my wildest dreams thought that I would be able to just go ahead and get my MFA.
So tell me, because these programs are looking for people with high artistic potential. They're looking for good work. You did such good work, Nettie,
Thank you.
and I know that it's only going to get better from here on out. But like before we dive into the work and the journey of that, tell us, if you will, like what were some of the programs that allowed you to apply and you don't necessarily have to go from your top choice down or anything, but like what were some of the ones that you applied to?
So my first year of applying to schools, in 2021, I had applied to LAMDA. I applied for their professional acting track, which is more contemporary based. So that's something to consider as well. They do have other programs. Um, I think also an MFA, MA in musical theater. I had looked at Bristol Old Vic a couple years ago. Unfortunately, they're no longer, at least for this year, doing international students, so that was kind of a bummer. I had looked at oh, Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. That was a big one on my list. So again, still looking at mostly classical programs. Some of them do have more contemporary based programs, but I was still looking at those at the time. Yale, the David Geffen School of Drama has a certificate option for the MFA. So that was another one that I was definitely had my eye on, an audition for the first time this year, which was a great experience. Um, yeah, it's definitely tricky to find, and a lot of them, if I'm going to be honest, were in the UK, and so I was
Yeah.
just kind of like, all right, I been fortunate enough to do some work out there. Like I love my time out there. Why not if I'm going to do this,
Yeah. Obviously a great place to study classical acting. Um, and really good training programs. We recommend all of those programs that you mentioned. And what I mean, now before we go into the work, I still want to ask you about the UK. Like are you have you lived out there? Do you have any family friends out there? Like are you looking forward to this jump across the pond? How are you feeling?
I am thrilled. I've been fortunate enough, I think for like maybe the last almost 10 years, I've been doing shows out there, not every year. This is maybe I had like 4 experiences out there, 3 or 4, where I was there for maybe a week to 10 days at the most. So I feel fortunate that I do have people on the ground there, that I know,
Nice.
people who I can hopefully meet up with during my free time. And definitely like a little community of theater people out there.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so I'm so
That's
excited. I'm so excited.
Oh my gosh, I am excited for you. We have, other clients of ours who got into Lambda this year who you'll be working with, obviously in class and everything and meeting up with. It's nice when you go so far away from home that you have a welcoming committee, you know. Um,
Definitely.
but it's all about the work. That's what we're dedicated to for the next, few years here, or in this case, 2 years. Yeah, we can talk about Lambda's MFA. It's really like equivalent to a 3 year, but it's just packed into 2 years because they don't have like a summer break or anything. It's just like
Right.
continuous. So anyway, it's equivalent to what we would call in America like a 3 year MFA. It's just packed into a 2 year timeline. So it's nonstop. Um, Tell us about the audition. Just jump right in. What happened in the Lambda room? How did it feel? What did you do first? How did they respond?
So my audition, it was actually the last audition I did. So out of four, it was my final audition. And at that point, I felt like, okay, I've worked these pieces. They asked for three classical pieces as opposed to two for the other schools. So a big part of my coaching was finding that other piece and like what fits into the other two that I know I'm for sure going to be doing. And so yeah, it was definitely an experience. Out of the four, I think it was like maybe the most intimidating only because I felt like this is like everything really clicked for me, not only like from the past three auditions I had, but then the redirection in the room and just talking with them. So when they brought me into the room, Rodney, who's the head of the program, sat me down. We had a kind of like informal interview. And one of the first things he did was look at my resume. And he talked about some of the people I had worked with, which was really wonderful. Neither of their names were on my resume. They weren't the directors of the shows I had done, but they were like artistic directors. And so that was really cool to be able to be like, he has a knowledge of like who these people are that I've worked with or their
Mm-hmm.
program or their theaters. And it just made it feel like, okay, like he's got an idea of like where I've worked and who I've worked with. And it made me feel like, okay, I can talk about those people who are like doing the work in those
Right.
companies, and why I loved working with them. I tried really hard to be concise because I know like in a high pressure adrenaline situation, I can just kind of like ramble on and maybe say something wild. And I was like,
Nice,
I need
nice.
to like keep it cool, concise before I jump into my pieces. So he asked what pieces I was doing. I ended up doing a piece from Othello. I did Paulina from The Winter's Tale, and then I did Viola, which I have can't wait to talk about.
Oh, I
um,
can't wait to hear about it. All right.
which was something that I never thought that I would do, especially in that setting. Um, and
Which piece from Othello?
so I did the It Is the Cause piece.
Right.
Um, and I had been fortunate enough to play the role recently. So working with Gary, it really helped to like go through all of these pieces in depth, and get a fresh perspective of them.
Right.
Uh,
I remember like, you know, you talked about having already done this in a production, and we made sure like, okay, you're not auditioning for the production. We got to make sure that we're not approaching this in the same way. It's great when you can do pieces from your past. But obviously, who is Nettie now? How do we approach this now for this particular audition? And you were just so flexible and open to that and super in because you responded to the material. You really love the material. And when you really love the material, right, you can go anywhere with it.
right.
And you were very malleable and all that stuff. We'll get into all that fun stuff in the rehearsals, but keep going with what happened in the room here.
Okay, so after talking for a little bit at the table, he gave me the room, said take your time. I definitely took my time, just kind of like setting up the space, setting up myself. I had kind of developed a framework for like my in and out of the pieces. My first piece was Paulina. It was just straight through Paulina, Othello. So I can sorry, Paulina, Viola, Othello. And then immediately, without skipping a beat, he got up from behind the table, came around, and I had set up some chairs already for the bed for Othello. Pulled up one of the chairs, like patted the chair without saying a word, indicating for me to come and sit down. So I sat down, and he's like, "Okay, so Leontes has just lost his wife and his child." And I was like, oh my God, we're going back to the very first piece. He's going to be redirecting me, and I just have to like say yes and not be like at all pulled by the fact that like I just finished Othello. We're going back to Winter's Tale. And I just have to go with it. And he redirected me and gave me this note about how Leontes had just lost, just suffered these two losses. And that my job was not to like beat up on him until like the very end of the piece. He gave me a line and I was like, okay, great. And I started the piece and he's like, no, 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 you're still being hard on him. Try it again. And I had to like center myself, and just say, okay, just, just do it, just speak the words, like have it be grounded in something, but like don't do anything until then. And I got to that last line, or the line he said, okay, that's where you can do it. And like the floodgates just opened. And I just had this like most honest response, like everything that I could have wanted and felt like I wanted to do with this piece happened organically at this moment, even
Oh
though
my
it wasn't like
gosh.
organic because I knew where I was going to do it. But like having this thing bubbling inside me allowed it to like just speak volumes to me. And it was like, wow. And he asked, this the question that they always ask, like, how did it feel? And I was able to be like, it felt good, and say why it felt good. And it was like,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm trying to make everything else matter, then nothing matters. And having this moment to really let that, percolate to it, like paid off in a way that I never experienced. And
Wow.
that for
That's
me was like,
incredible.
this is exactly the kind of work that I want to be doing. In my personal statement is kind of like not weird, it makes sense, but like my personal statement is all about like how do I take like all of my lived experiences, all of my emotions that I carry, and allow them to affect me but not take over my ability to like clearly tell a story. And it was like, I feel like I just did that in this moment. And it's like, this makes so much sense to me. So
Oh my gosh, that's
so
incredible.
I'm like drying my tears, right? Like I've just finished this piece and we're talking. And then he immediately, without skipping a beat, is like, okay, so Desdemona is the first thing. And I'm like, whoa, so now we're switching gears. You're not even telling me we're redirecting. We're going to my last piece.
Rodney doesn't have time.
Okay. No, 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 no time. And I, like reset up my space and just did it. And um yeah, he again, kind of asked how it felt, and I was able to talk about it a little bit more, and how it just really made sense to me and really clicked, and why. And it was wonderful experience.
That is
And
incredible.
then we sat down again, and he did, ask, some of the harder questions, like why now? You are, older, you do have experience, why now? And why not schools in the US? There are schools like, you know, like Juilliard, like Yale, that offer, free tuition, that type of thing. Why not those? And I said, was very candid at that at that point. I just said I had auditioned for those schools. My immediate experience leaving both of those auditions, which did have a contemporary component to them, was that it was like, why am I trying to do contemporary work? Like I know it will always be there for me, when I know that what I really want to do right now is classical theater. Like I know that that is something that allows me to have this kind of limitlessness where I feel like I'm not typed, where I can be anything, play anything, and like really stretch myself. Um, why am I trying to do anything else in that when that's clearly what I love?
That is cool. That is very cool. What an experience.
Yeah, yeah. It was very cool. And then, he gave me some time to ask a couple questions. And that was really it. And yeah, yeah,
That's all they needed. That's all
yeah,
you needed.
yeah,
It's so clear to me that like the chemistry was there artistically. It's like if you it felt like a very productive environment for you, and
absolutely.
clearly it was an inspiring environment for him, and the school because he's not wasting any time. He's getting right into it. He's not, you know, it's just like let's play, let's play. And you did, you totally did.
Yeah.
Um, so proud of you. So I love hearing the story. And So let's go back to how we even got to that point, right? You called me kind of later in the process, I think, in the winter for sure. Do you remember how you how we connected? How you came across us?
I think just like doing a search, I think I had looked at videos back in like a couple years ago, maybe when I first auditioned for schools. And I had the first time I auditioned for schools, I didn't get any coaching. I just went off of my own gut. A couple of the schools were like, we don't want you to have an outside voice. We want to see what you do with the pieces yourself. And so I think I had, over the last couple of years thought about it. And it wasn't until like maybe November, so very, very late, like we're talking like deadlines are like a week away type of thing. It was like, what if I just did this? What if I just, sent in my application, started working on my essays, and just did it. And I was like, okay, I've had with LAMDA in 2021, 22, I got to the final round, and I did as well with Bristol Old Vic. And so I was like, okay, what am I really needing to like get past that, get the final push? What is that kind of like edge that I need? What is missing? And so I thought, okay, I'm gonna look for coaching. And definitely a big part of it was I saw Gary Logan, and I thought, oh my gosh, I've heard this name before. I know people who've worked with him like all over the country. Like, um, I want to figure out how I can, try and work with him as well.
Yeah.
Even having experience with Shakespeare, it was like, okay, I need fresh eyes. I need somebody else to help me like make a really strong audition. And
Yeah.
even having all these like pieces in my pocket, it was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to make a good, strong audition. It was like, I have these strong pieces. Are they all the same note? Like maybe I don't do like three Lynn Nottage pieces for my contemporary. Like maybe I don't have like, how can I show all of myself in this very limited opportunity to audition for.
Totally. Yeah. You came in with such good quality material, like the actual writing was great writers like Lynn Nottage. And the clearly you had a passion for the material, So um I just want to address one thing you said just for the audience. Like when schools sometimes say, we don't want you to get outside eyes or get overcoached or something. Like we just want to see you and your talent, like how you respond to the material and where it goes for you. That is super important. That is super valid. A school is I would be really annoyed if I was a school if somebody came in with this like pre-planned, I know I'm going to gesture on this line. And it's just like this like robotic boxed performance. It doesn't show off your talent. So even though, you could potentially get to a point where you're like doing a good performance with that method, ultimately we're going to find out later that it's hard for you to take direction, it's hard for you to be malleable, you're not really playing artistically, you're trying to get a correct grade, you're trying to get an A plus. With us, obviously we understand that we would never work with you, and we didn't work with you in that way. We worked with you in the sort of the Rodney way, where it was like, love what you're doing, what if this, what if that, what if we tried this, how do you feel, what would it be like if we did. It's just exploring artistically, right?
Right. Right.
Which is still you. You're the one who's organically discovering the choices. You're not listening to us tell you you should say it this way, or we're not puppeteering you. I think that's where the schools get frustrated. This is my soapbox, by the way, for everyone listening. The schools definitely should get frustrated if people are coming in as puppeteers of someone else's interpretation.
Right.
You had your own interpretation. We just asked you questions to get more specific. What if this? What's the event here? How does this line? And you go, oh, I like that. I like that. Right. So tell us about some of your time in the sessions, maybe some of the light bulbs, some of the discoveries you made.
Yeah, I think the more that I had the opportunity to have somebody else, give me something else to try, the more I was able to then, in those moments where I was fortunately redirected, that I was able to say yes, that I was able to not overthink it, that I was able to just do it without going, oh my God, I have to now turn it on its head. Um, and I think the biggest light bulb moment I had was a session I did with you where I was very hesitant. You gave me a redirection and I was like, I didn't like fully commit to it. And I was like, that for me was like such good information to have, to say, oh wow, I had this, like I was like dragging my feet while doing it. And that's not something that I want to be doing when I'm put on the spot in this and in these moments, if I get to those moments. So I think that was like, okay, I need to like let things go a little bit. I need to be willing to really say yes, and allow it to be playful, allow it to be something completely different and not be so precious with things.
Dang,
And
I'm loving
that
this.
was like a very, very big moment for me to be like, okay, I don't have to say something the same way twice. I don't have to, it's never going to be the same way twice. Nothing ever is. And that I don't have to feel like I have to have a certain like product or something that I'm getting to. So that was a very liberating session, as much as in the moment I was like, oh my God, like why am I what am I signed up for? Why am I doing this? When in reality, that's like what I feel like what the school experience is gonna be. It's gonna be people saying, no, try this, do something else. Like, that was great, but like what else? What else is there?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
You
so
you
yeah, that
you
was
knew it
great.
in the moment too. Like it was such a, you know what, I know I'm holding myself back. I know I can feel like I just need to play with my impulses here. You handled it so beautifully because again, you got a great head on your shoulders. You know what you're after, and if you're holding yourself back, you don't want that to be the case. You know, it was so clear. It was not hard to coach you.
Thank you.
So that's awesome. That's awesome. Trying to think of anything else as far as like day of, like nerves. You've got this great work, you've played. Now it's time to showcase it. How do you handle that?
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody's different. I want to know how you kind of walked in there and what you told yourself, or what came up for you.
I feel like with the sessions that we had, one of the big things I wanted was this kind of like framework. And I think maybe we had talked about it like in our very first, like in our consultation. And I was like, oh, wow, that's something that I feel like is missing, like this kind of before moment, this, doing the actual work, and then this kind of coming out of it and trying to find what that is for me, because it looks different for everybody. And how to organically like keep myself really present, really grounded, and like open, and not like thinking about everything else in this really, really high pressure situation where it's
Yeah.
easy to think about like, my mom or like whatever it is, like expectations of myself or other people. Like there's so much that goes on that day that it was like, okay, how can I, in this time, knowing that I'm going to be beside myself with emotion, like just kind of like have my feet on the ground and figure out like, okay, this is a structure. This is like, it's like a dance. It's like a
Yeah.
meditation. That's kind of what I settled on with Gary, which was very, very cool. It really became like a meditation of like of grounding myself in this and having
Wow,
the
that's
whole
cool.
thing be a meditation. So that was very cool. Yeah.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, what happened? Tell me more.
I will say, so my first audition um was actually for Juilliard. And for that I was not eligible for the masters. I would have had to do the BA. Um, but it was like okay, very high pressure situation. I had never auditioned for Juilliard before. I ended up being in the very first group of the day. Um, so that was like very, very high pressure. But at the same time, I felt so grounded. I felt so open and ready. Like they had everyone come out and introduce themselves, and I felt just so like present with everybody, so like ready to go, that when I did walk into the room, it was like, okay, I'm here and I'm ready to go. So I think for me, I was warming up before the auditions, having my own kind of like into the pieces. I ran them at least once out loud so that I could feel like I was on my voice. I was like ready to go. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I feel like there was definitely moments of like I'm freaking out, but I tried my best to be like, okay, this is the more that I can just relax into what this is and know that everybody around me is having a similar experience of nerves and excitement, and just kind of like accept it for what it was. The easier it was for me to then I think eventually be like, okay, this is just another day where I get to share what I've been working on.
Yeah, yeah, it is a privilege,
Yeah.
especially in those kind of environments where, the people watching can truly appreciate artistically what you've got, as opposed to sometimes in the professional world where, their lens is looking through so much other consideration rather than just the art itself. So the drama school auditions are a very pure process, and it's a privilege for someone to be able to just share their gift. Very exciting, very cool. Wow, I mean, very mature of you to kind of, it
Thanks.
does take a lot of self-talk, a little bit like, okay, crazy nerves. Okay, also excited to share my work, also grounded, just kind of going back and forth between all that. Yeah. What else? Family, like, did they support your journey? Tell us, like, did they have any comments about this step in your life? Like, this is a whole life change, right? Like, what was, if you'd be willing to share, what is some of the conversations you had with them?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. My family was on board from the jump, but I feel like they have always been like very supportive of what I've been doing. And I think yeah, I consult them in like most everything I do, maybe too much for my age, but like I'm always checking in with them. I'm always like, hey, do you want to like listen to my personal statement? Like, do you want to like maybe I don't think I ever did my pieces for them. Um, which I know some people do, which I think is fabulous, but I never really, went there. But they've been just incredible. And like my mom's excited to come and visit me in London. Um,
Yeah, that's
but I
awesome.
think it's yeah, it's definitely a really wonderful support um for this kind of like life change. And if anything, a lot of the conversations I was having was like, I feel like this is going to only positively um affect my life, and that like having the ability to have an MFA is going to allow me to do this work, whether it is on stage or off, for the rest of my life. That it's
Hmm.
pushing me into a level of work that I'm going to be able to sustain, and is going to take me somewhere. And I think the more that I had that kind of conversation with them, the more excited they got, the more I felt like I know they're proud of me, but like they're incredibly proud of the work that I put in to make this happen over the years. And I think the biggest thing is that it's allowed me to be proud of like the nonstop work that I've been doing, to have like a
Hmm.
moment of like, oh wow, yeah, I did this really wonderful thing, and now I can keep doing more wonderful things.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's another stratosphere for sure, and you'll never be able to like go back. With the type of intensity that this training is and the level that you can play at, you're just gonna have a new threshold. It's just a new, baseline.
Yeah.
and I know you're going to have a blast. What are your thoughts on, your life after school? Not that you have to think about it too hard right now, but when you go from America to UK, or any international student who leaves their home country to go to drama school, there's a consideration of like, well, am I going to come back to my home country right after? Do I expect to start some career like jobs after school? Do I want to keep my career going right after school in the UK? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's definitely something that I've been thinking about. It is it's a year and a half program. At the end of the first year, we do have a showcase in New York and also in LA, which is really wonderful. So I'm definitely thinking about, okay, if I'm already based in New York, if there's an opportunity to get representation in New York, like maybe I want to come back here and continue to work and go after those, next level gigs. That's definitely something I'm thinking about. And at the same time, it's like, if my visa is extended, there is definitely opportunity for work. During one of our orientations over Zoom, they talked about how a lot of students who are US citizens have been staying, that there is opportunities. There are production companies that are looking for people who can work in both places, people who are coming from programs who are, looking to extend their work.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I definitely, it is on my mind as an opportunity that I would love. I'll be interested to see like a year and a half from now, or even a year from now, like how I'm feeling. But I think the yeah, the opportunity is definitely there, and it's something that I am happy to stay open to.
Right, right. And once you're there in the community, you'll kind of be able to kind of hear from the local network,
Right.
like what are some of the alumni doing? Who are the casting directors in that area? What's their philosophy? Yeah. And so hopefully the opportunities are multitudinous.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, this is awesome. I mean, I've loved hearing everything you've shared about your pieces, you've shared about your sessions, you've shared about your prep, your mental, you're going in there, what happened in the room. I mean, this is how you got into drama school, Nettie.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so grateful for opportunity to work with you guys. I feel like I knew kind of what I thought it was going to be going in, and I think, like, reflecting on everything, the biggest thing was like, okay, if my reason for like doing Shakespeare, for example, is like this limitless potential I see in myself, how like the limitations that I still had on myself, um and that was very, very like helpful information for me to be like, okay, here's where I'm still limiting myself. Here's like what I can do. Like, there are people here to help me like find a way out of that and find something else, other than just like this kind of like wall that I had. And that was very, very helpful. And um I'm gonna go on one tangent only because I feel like I have
Jeez,
to.
I want to hear everything.
You have to. So one of my big things was, I was talking about picking this third piece for my LAMDA audition. And I was looking for something, there's all these like unwritten rules, right? Especially about Shakespeare. There's not a lot of material, especially for if you're looking for female pieces, or if you're looking for comedy. And I think Gary Logan is a genius, but one of the things that the way that we approached it was like, okay, you've got Othello and you've got Paulina, and while they might both seem like very like the same pieces, if you think about them as like elements, Paulina is fire and Othello is earth. At least in this particular scene, he's already done all the other fiery, watery things that he could do. This is earth. And so it's like, okay, now we're looking for something that is, a different quality, the air, air,
Here,
water. What else am I
water.
missing?
Yeah.
Quintessence. What else am I missing? And so it was very, very helpful to think about it that way, for especially for anyone who's like, I have to do like, it has to either be funny or has to be like really sad. So that really made me think differently about pieces. And then when he suggested, we went through like all of the pieces that I know, and like what else I could do. Was a piece I had never worked on before, which was the ring speech. And I feel like everyone is like, you can't do X, Y, and Z. You can't do, these overdone pieces, especially, for drama school, especially in like a high caliber audition. You can't do this. And I always thought like, okay, that's an unwritten rule. Like I can't do it. And so when he suggested it, it was like, I don't know. I don't know. But it was like, the more I heard him talk about it, it was like, she's not trying to be funny. This is, something she's trying to work out, and has moments of, you know, things that you wouldn't, that are not comedy, essentially. And so I found my way in that way. But I think the biggest, going back to this limitlessness, it was like, why am I limiting my options for monologues? Why am I telling myself that I can't do something in this particular genre of theater where I feel limitless? Why am I putting this limit on myself in terms of material? And
That
so
is
that
so
was just
amazing.
like, okay, yeah,
Yeah, that
definitely
is
very
brilliant.
hopeful to me to see, oh wow, I am doing that to myself. Maybe don't. And
Maybe
it
don't.
worked. it
That's amazing. That's amazing. I want to ask you about Gary, just because I know right when we first talked, you had mentioned him and your excitement to work with him. And obviously, um, I knew that you had professional experience with Shakespeare, many regional productions. And I was like, I'm interested to find out like what she's going to take away from Gary, right? Obviously, for people who work with Gary every day, he's a faculty member at a top drama school. So all the students that work with him, maybe they don't have the type of experience you do, right? I remember when I first worked with him as a high school student, he came to he did a special workshop for my high school. Anyway,
yeah.
he turned my world upside down artistically, but for someone like you who's got some confidence with Shakespeare, passion for Shakespeare, know-how, I mean, I know there's a lot of things, but like, how did Gary get you to another level even than you already were?
Yeah, it was incredible working with him. I just want to say he's so good. He's just so he's such like a wonderful human being, and also like such a wonderful educator. Like I never felt like I was like, sure, like there's a lot of opinions about Shakespeare, like there's no like one wrong way to do it. I mean, unless maybe you're not giving something to it or not trying. But I never felt like what I was doing was like wrong. It always felt like I guess, and um, so for instance, like the Paulina piece was a piece that I had brought from the previous round of auditioning, and it was one that I had done on my own without outside eyes. And then like maybe after those auditions, I worked on like in a workshop like once, but something that I used and was good for to an extent. But when we actually worked on it, I found so many instances of like even just small things like inflection on like a word that repeated and it completely changed the meaning, or like actually using a comma to do what it needed to do, and bring entirely new like moments and beats and colors to pieces that I had been doing for like the last 3 years. And it was like, wow, this is an entirely new piece. And it makes me feel like even though I have the clarity of like what I am saying and what's going on, that there is now like the vocal and like the energetic clarity of like,
Hmm.
these are my actual words and this is me actually saying this because I have such an opinion about it, and it's just using like punctuation.
Right.
And it was like,
Sometimes it can be so
wow,
easy,
yeah,
you
and it's
know?
like, how did I not how did I not think about it like this? And I'm so glad that I am now thinking about it like this, because even though I might have learned like new things about Shakespeare or about how to get into a piece over the years, I never went back and applied them to the pieces that I already had memorized or worked on. So that was really exciting to me. And I think just approaching things from like, really, really getting into the beats of things, really finding my own into something. Like, for example, with the ring speech. I now love the ring speech. I'm such an advocate for the ring speech, where before I was like, no, 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 no. Um, don't do that. But do it. So there's like some language where I was like, oh, I don't really, doesn't really sit well with me. It was like the kind of like women's wax and hearts and like this kind of like binary, like there's like this doesn't feel good, and like I don't know why it doesn't feel good, and we just like worked through it to the point where it took on this entirely new meaning, but it was so rooted in like me and my opinion of women and like the women of the time, and like all of that was just like supporting what I was saying, and instead of like trying to just like, oh, just be funny and like this is a comedic piece, and like, you know which it has those moments of, more like physical comedy and like stand up, and like it has those moments, it has all those fabulous moments, but there was something in there that was like not, there was a knot in there that I was trying
Uh,
to untie, pun intended.
yeah, yeah.
And it was like, oh wow, this moment I don't think I would have come to by myself, trying to figure out, no matter how many times I ran it myself, or the things that I know how to do with Shakespeare, like to make it be something else. Like I don't think I ever would have come to this on my own. So that was really
Mhm.
wonderful to have those moments of like really specificity in all these different beats to figure out like how to make them, or like my own words, and how to
Mhm.
really be so rooted and so opinionated that it was no longer like this is someone doing a Shakespeare piece. It was like these are my words, and
Yeah, exactly.
I love
So
that.
many people try to achieve that with everything we do, is like, how do we make it so it's so personalized that it doesn't even feel like acting?
Yeah.
It just feels like I'm sharing my point of view in this imaginary world, you know? And you clearly, well, first of all, you have to be open to doing that, but you were always very, very coachable and excited. But even if you are, you have to be willing to, like, yeah, get that specific and do that work and like play it, learn by doing. You totally just put it out there, and you kind of acknowledged where it was feeling a little whatever, whatever. You just massage that, you kind of worked through that stuff. And I love what you're saying about the overdone pieces. Obviously, we preach this to the high heavens. Like, it's not about the piece itself, it's about your relationship to the piece,
Yeah.
right? And you had a real relationship to that piece. You developed a new relationship to that piece such that you feel like this speaks to me,
Yeah.
you know? And if that's the case, we could see a million different actors do the same piece, because no one else would do it the way you did it, you know?
Yeah.
And so in that way, you showed off not only your talent, but you also showed off the genuine you as an artist, like who you are as an artist. You use that monologue as a platform. It's not like, maybe you would do it that way if you auditioned for the production, but maybe you wouldn't. What it's about in drama school auditions is sharing who you are through these pieces. Do you feel like you accomplished that? You feel like you shared that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I
Yeah.
feel really very proud of the work that I shared, to the point where it was like, okay, even if this didn't work out, um, I'm very, very proud of, how I showed up, and the work that I did to get there. And yeah, it was a very, very cool experience. I think just looking at all of the auditions and how they informed like one and then after another. And um I feel like after everyone, I was, writing emails of like, here's everything that happened.
That's
Especially with
cool.
the Shakespeare, it was like, it's like, hey Gary, like this is how this went. And you know, yeah, it was very nice to be able to reflect. And yeah, my
Oh, I love that. Because
one
we all
tangent.
know we're all jumping for joy over here. We're like, did you hear Nettie got into this school? You know, so and so. All the anytime a client lets us know their wins and all that stuff, we're just as excited. You know, so we were bouncing it around as well inside the coaches meetings and whatnot. Um,
Yeah,
but anyway,
one final tangent that I will say,
yes,
just about the auditions informing each other. My third audition was for Shakespeare Theater Company and George Washington University's program, and I did get a redirection, and I ended up using like not only like the way that he had like set up the Desdemona's bed, but also the the notes that he gave me, and then used that in my LAMDA audition. So it was like, okay, all of these things are informing one another. It's just like more to add or to think about and consider going into the next. So that was like looking at it like in the full scheme of things, like I'm very glad that I allowed myself to say like yes in that moment of, okay, we're now like doing this completely facing a different direction, or you know, we're doing it, you know, a different way.
right.
Yeah, definitely.
It's genius. You have to be willing to like have that openness because yeah, in the next audition, it can make your pieces better. I definitely remember getting notes in my early auditions that if I thought it helped the piece, what am I doing? I'm sharing the piece tomorrow at a different school. I've got it. It's already a better piece.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you, what's the one final thing you would say to our audience, you know, knowing them and knowing where they're at? Maybe you have something. That was a beautiful final thing, but what else, if anything, would you share with them as they move forward?
I would say in that same vein, take notes, like take journal. Like I would give myself like time after every session to just write. Or there were like times in sessions where I think maybe one of my first ones was Stacy, she was talking and I was like, give me 1 second, I'm gonna write this, can you repeat that? Or just like asking, I don't think I ever did, but like asking like if, and I don't know if that's possible to record if you don't, if that's how you learn, like but having something to come back to, um in my own words, was very, very helpful. And it allowed me to, like, when I was thinking about it, actually have some detail of like, okay, this is something I should, something to think about. And I think that really just like going back, I still have like a lot of them saved, and they have informed like everything that I've done afterwards. One more tangent. I remember Gary went on a tangent um in one of our sessions about like modifiers and like parenthetical statements. And he was, you know, was talking about something, you know, and like how the different modifiers, you know, how it changes, how inflection changes, what's important, what's not important. And then he was like, I'm so sorry, like I went on a tangent there. And I was like, no, that was great. Like, I'm so glad I was like there to, you know, write down notes and like ask some follow-up questions. And then I had an audition and a callback, and the entire like 2 pages of text was in prose, and it was all parenthetical statements and all like things that we had just talked about. And
Wow.
I went into that callback and worked on that material, and I felt so confident. I ended up booking the job, which is incredible.
Oh
It
my
was like,
gosh.
had I not had this very, very specific, you know, session with him and like and him going on that tangent, I don't think I would have, I don't know, who knows, but I don't think I would have gotten that job because it
That
was
is
just like
incredible. Yeah.
fresh. It was like I had the notes, like I was ready to go and do this with something completely different outside of my audition. And sure, I was doing it in my audition as well, but it was like what a wonderful gift to be able to use that in immediately um
Yes.
and book a job.
What a wonderful thing too. Like you're saying, everything affects everything, right? And
Yeah.
when you have this mentality that you have and that we had when we were auditioning, everybody who gets into these drama schools has these all-in mentality. And when you're all in, you discover things, you put yourself in situations that you would not have been able to learn from had you kind of been a little bit more casual about the whole thing, not writing things down. No, but you're in a situation where you're in a room with Gary Logan and he's going on a soapbox. You don't find yourself in that situation unless you're all in, Nettie. You're all in. I love it. It
Yeah,
totally affected you in another opportunity, and it's all good. It's all very good.
yeah, yeah,
Well,
definitely.
thank you so much. I mean, this has been so cool to reflect. It's been a while since we've talked, obviously, and I've had such a good time hearing your story. And we're in touch, obviously, you and I. But thank you for sharing for our audience, and we will talk to you soon.
Yes, absolutely.
All right,
Thank you
Nettie.
so much. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Talk soon. Bye.
Bye.